Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
This time, we're heading into the world of Karen Marie Moning's Dark Fever.
Ooh, the Fever series.
Yeah, the first book. It's a popular one, that's for sure. But it's also, well, let's just say it gets people talking.
You can say that again. People tend to either love it or hate it. No middle ground with this one.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so perfect for a deep dive. We're going to break down what makes Dark Fever so captivating, so controversial, and, well, so unique.
Right. We're diving into the reviews, the themes, the characters, everything.
And trust me, there's a lot to unpack. So for those who haven't read it, Dark Fever is urban fantasy. We're talking fae, magic, and a whole lot of mystery, all set against the backdrop of Dublin.
Can't forget Dublin. The city practically becomes a character itself.
Absolutely. But first, let's meet our heroine, MacKayla Lane.
Ah, Mac. She's something else.
Right. She starts off as this seemingly typical Southern belle, obsessed with fashion, loves the color pink, all that.
It's almost like Moning goes overboard with the descriptions of Mac's outfits at first.
Yeah, and some reviewers even quoted entire passages about her wardrobe choices. It's like her clothes were characters themselves.
Oh, totally. But I think Moning does this on purpose. Like it's a deliberate choice.
Do you think so? Why?
Well, think about it. We're in this world with fae who can literally change their appearance at will. Glamour, illusions, the whole 9 yards.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
So by initially presenting Mac as this, fashion-focused character, Moning sets up this contrast. Like, what we see on the surface might not be the whole story.
It's like she's playing with her expectations, right?
Exactly. And maybe even making us underestimate Mac, just like people might underestimate humans in the presence of these powerful fae.
It's a clever way to tie those seemingly superficial details to the book's deeper themes.
Totally agree. And speaking of characters who defy expectations, we can't forget Jericho Barrons.
Oh, Barrons. He's a whole other deep dive waiting to happen.
Oh, yeah. He's that mysterious bookstore owner, and let me tell you, readers have strong opinions about him.
For sure. Some love him, some hate him. There's no in-between with Barrons.
No kidding. You've got reviewers calling him their ultimate book boyfriend, and others saying he's a straight-up abusive jerk.
He definitely fits that love him or hate him mold. I can see why he's often labeled a Byronic hero.
Classic Byronic hero. Brooding, tormented, morally gray, all the trademarks.
Yeah, but does Moning manage to give that archetype a fresh take? Or does it feel a bit overdone?
That's a good question. I think she adds some interesting layers to him.
Like what?
Well, there's this constant push and pull with MacKayla. He's always testing her, pushing her limits, and he's shrouded in secrets, never fully reveals his cards.
Which, of course, adds to his mystique.
Totally. And let's not forget the whole bookstore element. I mean, it's not every day you find a Byronic hero who's also a bookworm.
True. But I do have to admit, some of the reviewers' descriptions of his physical appearance were, well, unsettling is a good word.
Oh yeah, some got pretty dark with those comparisons.
Yeah, like one reviewer thought he resembled Richard Ramirez.
Whoa! Yeah, there was that. Others focused on his intensity, his magnetism. It's all over the place.
And then there's that scene where he paints Mac's nails. What was that about?
Honestly, I'm still trying to figure that one out. It's so bizarre.
Right. On one hand, it's so out of character for someone like Barrons.
But when you think about how he's always pushing Mac out of her comfort zone, it kind of makes sense in a twisted way.
Maybe. He's definitely trying to break down her defenses, and that scene is, well, it's definitely memorable.
Memorable is one way to put it. Speaking of memorable, we got to talk about the fae themselves.
Yeah, these are not your childhood fairy tales.
Not even close. These fae are dark, dangerous, and predatory.
Forget Tinkerbell.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Moning draws from traditional fae lore, the Seelie and Unseelie courts.
So like the good and bad factions of the fae world.
Exactly, but even the Seelie fae, the supposedly good guys, they're not exactly innocent in Dark Fever.
Yeah, they're powerful beings with their own agendas. And those agendas don't always align with human morals.
Not even a little bit. One reviewer even described them as parasites, sucking the life and beauty out of their victims.
Yikes. That paints a pretty grim picture.
Yeah, it does. And then there's Vlane.
Oh, Vlane. Don't even get me started.
He's a prime example of just how dark Moning's fae can be. He preys on women, basically using sex as a weapon.
Those encounters with Mac are disturbing, to say the least.
They are, and the way the fae are described, all sharp angles and otherworldly beauty.
It adds to that sense of danger, right?
Exactly. They're alluring but terrifying at the same time. You never know what they'll do next.
Which makes me think, maybe Moning is drawing a parallel here.
A parallel? How so?
Well, just like we shouldn't be fooled by the Fae's beauty, maybe we shouldn't jump to conclusions about Mac just because of her outward appearance.
Oh, that's a really interesting point. Like, maybe there's more to her than meets the eye?
Right. And that seems to be a recurring theme in this book. There's always something deeper going on beneath the surface. It's like you need to be constantly reading between the lines.
Totally. And then there's the setting itself. Dublin.
Ah, Dublin. It's more than just a setting in DARKFEVER, isn't it?
It's practically a character itself, with all the cobblestone streets, the pubs, the history.
And that atmosphere, that ancient energy, Moning really captures it.
She does, and she even brings in specific locations, like the Temple Bar district, which just adds another layer of realism.
Yeah, it makes you feel like you're right there with Mac, experiencing the city alongside her.
For sure. And then there are these dead zones.
Oh yeah, those creepy pockets where the Fae influence bleeds into the human world.
So eerie. It's like Moning took all those layers of Dublin's history, the Viking settlements, the medieval churches, and infused them with this supernatural element.
Makes you wonder what's lurking beneath the surface of a city you think you know. One reviewer even said she felt like she was experiencing Dublin's hidden heart.
It's like the city itself reflects those themes of hidden worlds and blurred realities that run through the book.
And then there's the way the story is told, with MacKayla being aware she's narrating it to us.
Right. Those meta elements that some reviewers pointed out.
It's like she's winking at the reader, letting us in on the joke that there's more to this story than we initially realized.
Totally. And it creates this sense of dramatic irony where we know something's coming, but we don't know the specifics.
So we're constantly trying to guess what'll happen next.
Keeps you on the edge of your seat. And it makes you wonder how much of what MacKayla's telling us is actually true.
Is she shaping the narrative to her advantage? Is she a reliable narrator?
Those are the questions, right? It adds this whole other layer of uncertainty to the story.
For sure. And then there's the Sinsar Dobe, that ancient, powerful book everyone's after.
Ah, yes. The Sinsar Dub. Pretty interesting that in a world full of magic and fae, it's a book that's the most sought-after thing.
Makes you think about the power of knowledge, doesn't it?
It really does. Like, in this world, knowledge is the ultimate weapon. And whoever controls the Sinsar Dub, well, they control a lot.
Exactly. It makes you wonder what secrets it holds. What kind of knowledge could be so dangerous that everyone's willing to risk everything for it?
Right. And speaking of risks, who can MacKayla really trust in this world?
Yeah, good point. Everyone seems to be hiding something. Even Barrons, who's supposed to be her protector.
Exactly. It's like Moning is constantly making us question who's on whose side.
Which keeps things interesting. But we're just getting started. We've only scratched the surface of DARKFEVER and all its complexities.
There's a lot more to unpack, especially when it comes to how readers reacted to the book, because, let's be honest, DARKFEVER sparked some heated debates among its fans.
Oh, for sure. And we'll delve into all that and more after a quick break. Stay with us.
And welcome back to our deep dive into DARKFEVER. Where were we?
We were about to get into some of the reader reactions.
Right. And maybe some of the more controversial stuff.
Like how people feel about MacKayla.
Oh, yeah. Mac definitely gets mixed reviews.
I can see that. She's not your typical kick-butt heroine.
Not at all.
No.
But I think that's part of what makes her interesting.
So what were some of the main criticisms?
Well, remember how we talked about all those fashion descriptions?
Yeah, the whole pink obsession.
Right. Some readers found it frustrating. Like, why is she worried about her clothes when there are, fae trying to kill her?
It does seem a little out of place, given the dangerous situation she's in.
It does. But then some reviewers saw it as a way for Mac to cope with the trauma she's going through.
Okay, I can see that. Like a defense mechanism.
Yeah, exactly. Keeping a sense of normalcy in a world that's suddenly turned upside down.
And we did talk about how Moning might be using those details to kind of highlight that contrast between the surface and what lies beneath, right?
Right. It's all about appearances and how they can be deceiving, just like with the fae.
It's a clever way to tie those themes together. But what about Barrons? He seems to be the most divisive character of all.
Oh, Barrons is a whole other conversation.
Right. I mean, is he an alpha male or is he just plain abusive? There's a lot of debate about that.
A lot of debate. And honestly, it's not an easy question to answer. He's definitely got that dominant personality, always in control.
Which some readers find totally swoon-worthy.
Exactly. But others see it as a red flag, like he's constantly pushing Mac around, withholding information.
Yeah, he's not exactly Mr. Open Book.
Not at all. He's playing some kind of long game, but we're never quite sure what his true motives are.
It's like Moning wants us to figure it out for ourselves, to decide whether we trust him or not.
Totally. And it keeps the tension high, that's for sure.
It does. But speaking of untrustworthy characters, can we talk about V. Lane for a minute?
Oh, V. Lane, he's a whole other level of creepy.
He is. He's like the embodiment of everything dangerous about the Fae.
Right. The seduction, the manipulation, the way he uses his powers to control women.
Those scenes with Mac are definitely not for the faint of heart.
Definitely not. But it does make you wonder why some reviewers were still attracted to him.
Oh, I saw those comments. Like, even though they knew he was bad news, they couldn't help but find him alluring.
It's that whole dangerous bad boy trope taken to the extreme, and Moning writes it so well that you kind of get caught up in it too.
It's like a train wreck you can't look away from.
Yeah.
You know he's trouble, but there's something about him that keeps you hooked.
Totally. And that's what makes Dark Fever so compelling. It's not all sunshine and roses. There's darkness, there's danger, and there are characters who make you question everything.
It's a world where you can't take anything at face value, and even the setting, Dublin, reflects that.
Oh, absolutely. Dublin is more than just a backdrop in this story.
Right, it's got its own secrets, its own hidden layers.
And Moning does such a great job of describing it. The atmosphere, the history, the feeling that something magical is always just around the corner.
It's like the city itself is a character, and not always a friendly one.
Yeah, with those dead zones and all that creepy Fae energy lurking everywhere.
Makes you wonder what you might encounter if you wandered down the wrong alleyway.
Right. It's like Dublin has this whole other world hidden beneath the surface, just waiting to be discovered.
Which is kind of like the book itself, isn't it?
Exactly. There's always more to uncover, more to think about. And those meta elements, with MacKayla talking directly to us, the readers.
Yeah, it breaks that fourth wall, pulls us right into the story.
And makes us question everything we're seeing and hearing. Because if MacKayla's shaping the narrative, can we really trust her?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
And it makes you think about how subjective truth can be.
Especially in a world like Darkfever, where illusions and magic are everywhere.
Right? And then there's that whole mystery surrounding the Sinsar Dove.
The book that everyone's after.
The most dangerous object in a world full of dangerous creatures.
Makes you wonder what kind of knowledge could be so powerful, so potentially destructive.
And who MacKayla can really trust to help her find it. I mean, even Barrons, who's supposed to be her protector.
He's got his own secrets, his own agenda. We're never quite sure if he's helping her or using her.
It's that constant tension, that uncertainty, that makes Darkfever so hard to put down.
And it definitely keeps you coming back for more. Which is good, because Darkfever is just the beginning. There are so many more books in the series, so many more layers to this world and these characters. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's take a closer look at how Moning uses language to create this world and these characters. Because her writing style is definitely part of what makes Darkfever so unique.
And maybe even a little controversial.
Oh, definitely controversial. Welcome back to our deep dive into Darkfever.
So, we've talked about the characters, the setting, the plot.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground.
But there's one more element we need to discuss.
What's that?
Moning's writing style.
Oh, yeah. Her style is definitely distinctive.
To say the least. Some reviewers found it a bit over the top, especially with all the sensory details.
Right, like you can practically smell the leather and feel the cobblestones.
And MacKayla's internal monologue, it's almost constant.
It is. Some reviewers loved that. They felt like they were really inside Mac's head, experiencing everything with her.
I get that. It definitely creates a sense of intimacy with the narrator.
Totally. But others found it distracting, even overwhelming at times.
Yeah, it can be a bit much if you're not used to that kind of immersive writing style.
Definitely. And then there are those meta elements we keep coming back to.
Oh, right. Where MacKayla breaks the fourth wall and talks directly to the reader.
Exactly. Not everyone was a fan of that.
Some reviewers thought it was gimmicky.
Yeah, like it took them out of the story.
But I actually found it kind of fun.
Me too. It adds this layer of self-awareness, like MacKayla is in on the joke.
And it reinforces that idea that we shouldn't take anything at face value.
Exactly. Because MacKayla might be an unreliable narrator.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
She's telling us this story, but we're never quite sure if we're getting the whole truth.
Which makes you question everything.
It does. And that's what makes Darkfever so compelling. It's a book that keeps you guessing, keeps you thinking, and keeps you coming back for more.
Totally agree. And that's even with all its imperfections, its quirks, its divisive elements.
Exactly. Darkfever's not a perfect book, but it's a memorable one.
And it definitely sparks conversations.
Which is what we love to do here on Deep Dive. So if you're looking for a book that will challenge you, surprise you, and maybe even make you a little uncomfortable,
Dark Fever might be just what you need.
And if you've already read it, we hope this deep dive has given you some new insights and maybe even sparked some new debates.
Always fun to see things from different perspectives, right?
Absolutely. So, until next time, keep diving deep.